Tales of American Political History with Clint and Porter Hackney.
The city of Galveston was formally founded in 1839 on a narrow, elongated island off the Texas coast. The island separates Galveston Bay from the Gulf of Mexico, and by 1900 it was a bustling, prosperous port with a population of about 38,000. The people who lived there had the bragging rights to a number of Texas firsts. It was home to the first medical college in the state's first electric lights and streetcars were there, and the first public library in Texas was also there. It all bode well for Galveston's future. Wednesday, September 5th in 1900, was a normal weekday there with warm, clear weather. Very few gave any attention to a 27-word note in the Galveston Daily News weather section, reporting a tropical storm over Cuba heading to the Florida coast. We've been talking about the prosperous port city of Galveston, Texas in September of the year 1900. On Wednesday, September 5th, the Galveston Daily News ran a 27-word notice in the paper's daily weather section. The note reported that a tropical disturbance was moving over Cuba, heading for southern Florida. It was dateline Washington, D.C., September 4. The signature was simply signed with one name. The name was Moore. That was Willis Moore, who was the National Director of the United States Weather Bureau. It's true that accurate long-range tracking of hurricanes was difficult in 1900, but Moore's notice about the nature of the storm and its direction was so incredibly wrong, you would think forecasting was primitive and that nobody knew anything in advance of the storm's strength or track. But that was not the case. On September 5, 1900, Moore issued a notice to his regional bureaus that there was a tropical disturbance over Cuba and that it was turning toward South Florida. It was an inaccurate report, to say the least. It was common knowledge at the time that experts in Cuba were the best in the world at assessing Caribbean storms and the tracks they were likely to take. And they were fairly certain that this September storm had become violent and was turning toward the Texas coast. But Mr. Moore and the Weather Bureau ignored that information. The reason had to do with a very complicated relationship between the U.S. and Cuba developed in the Spanish-American War. Because of political differences developed during the Spanish-American War, Moore ignored a Cuban warning that what he had forecast as a tropical disturbance headed to Florida was actually a violent hurricane barreling down on the Texas coast with no warning. On the morning of Thursday, September 6, 1900, the people of Galveston, Texas were waking up to a clear blue sky over the Gulf of Mexico. But out in the Gulf, drawing more energy and throwing wind in every direction, the storm had become a fully organized system of destruction with an eye 30 miles across. By 4 a.m. on Friday, everyone on Galveston Island awoke to the Gulf of Mexico in their yard. Hurricanes were not given names in 1900, but the one that hit Galveston got a name in its aftermath, the Great Galveston Hurricane. Willis Moore, chief of the U.S. Weather Bureau, received his first news by telegram. It read, "The prairie is strewn with debris and dead bodies. Large steamship stranded 2 miles inland. An estimated 8,000 to 12,000 died on the island, and many who died had their corpses piled onto carts for burial at sea." In the end, Willis Moore suffered no professional consequences for his incompetence, and the most lasting impact of the disaster was that it ended the golden era of Galveston, as the storm turned potential investors inland toward Houston, which eventually became the largest city in Texas. This is Clint and Porter Hackney.